This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to the Friday Twilight Show. I'm Claire Cannon. Thank you for joining me, whether you are here live or listening to the podcast. How many times have you described yourself as a teacher, even though you're also a runner, play a musical instrument, or have many other talents? Today, I'm looking at the links between our job and our overall identity.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Good evening, and thank you again for joining me today. In this episode, I'm thinking all about our identity. It's quite a big question, actually, to ask who are we? But thinking about as school staff, and I say that actually to cover all sorts of roles. I may use the word teacher or senior leader throughout the show, but this is something that is relevant to whatever role you do in school. But also, our identity as people in the wider sense. So, what does it mean? Who are we? Are we a teacher? Are we a deputy head or a teaching assistant? Or are we more than that? I know personally I'd like to think that I'm a whole lot more than that. Um, just got me thinking about our professional identity and our personal identity. Are they two separate things? Are they linked in some way? Are there crossovers? Perhaps there's times when we're more one than the other, but are we ever only one of those things? Or can we never really sort of extricate one from the other? Now, interestingly, when I posted about this online to see if people were interested in talking about it, I got quite a lot of responses with some really, really different stories, some really different ideas. So later in the show, I'm looking forward to talking to Jack, who I can already see is with us this evening. So thank you, Jack, and hello. I can see you ready and waiting to go. And hopefully also a second guest who has just messaged me to say they've only just got in. They've been stuck on the M1 because there was an accident. So definitely got Jack. Thank you, Jack. I can see you there. And hopefully, as I say, a second guest later on. We'll see. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that one. So, anyway, back to this idea of identity. I actually wanted to pare this back and look at what the dictionary says identity is. So, I had a look at the Cambridge English Dictionary. There are others out there. And the definition I found was the fact of being or feeling that you are a particular type of person or organisation. Then there was a further sort of clarification that said the qualities that make a personal organisation different from others, which I thought, that does kind of sum it up. But it is obviously it's not a superficial thing, but it's not going into perhaps some of the depths around when we might feel perhaps more aligned with our identity, or when perhaps there can be problems related to who we want to be, who we think we are, and how others perhaps perceive us. Although interestingly, the same dictionary did also mention that we can have a sense of identity. So that's somehow different to our actual identity, our sense of identity. So the example here was actually your job. Your job title, your role is something that the people who wrote that dictionary, I don't know who they are, but they feel is something that gives us quite a key part of that sense of who we are. Now, in the same way as something can give us a sense of identity, it also talked about the fact that we can lose our identity. An example given in this particular case was that someone who goes to prison loses their identity. But actually, that last point got me thinking, because if you are in prison, and I do get what they're saying about if you go to prison, you lose a sense of who you are. You can't be the person perhaps that you normally are. However, perhaps being a prisoner then becomes your new identity, or at least, temporarily, however long you happen to be there. But is it something that is predetermined? That role has certain expectations or stereotypes attached to it. So it's not necessarily something the person has agency over. It's not something that they can influence perhaps as much as life on the outside. And that then set me down a track of starting to think that maybe identity is connected with free choice or being able to influence what is going on around us and how others then see us as individuals. So I've kind of gone full circle here. And back to this thing of whether by being school staff, and again, whatever role you hold, teaching assistant, senior leader, subject teacher, ECT, all of those things, do they have some part to them that is almost predetermined and set, and that just becomes who we are when we take on that role? So yes, I have chosen to be, in my career, I've been a subject teacher, I've been a Senko, been assistant head. Those kind of things are roles that I've chosen, but is there also an element of things that then become me that I didn't get to have choice over? Now, I can see we've got a couple of people listening live this evening, which is lovely. If you've got any thoughts, it'd be lovely to hear from you. Please do text in if you've got anything that you'd like to add. Anyway, wanted to pick up a little bit more then on this idea about identity and free choice, and about being able to influence what others see in us. So I was doing a little bit of background reading and I found quite an interesting article from the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute. Um, in their journal, there's a report by someone called Isa Yilmaz who suggests that, and this is a quote. They said a person's subjective sense of self is an essential factor that guides the way they carry themselves, who they associate with, and how they make decisions. Now, Isa Yilmaz then goes on to describe how our experiences in childhood plant the seeds of our identity as adults. And this was very much around things we are told. And, again, a little bit of reflection on my part here. I started thinking back to, yeah, there were times I was told I was naughty, or there were times when I was told I was too messy and needed to tidy up. We're given messages by the adults around us, by the people who influence us, whether that's parents, whether it's extended family, teachers, and to some extent peers as well. Um, so all of those things are starting to plant the seeds. Then you kind of go through this stage, or a lot of people do as a teenager, where you have that bit of finding out who you really are. And I guess many of us actually will recall being rebellious or doing something that felt like it was going against the grain, or something that perhaps we hadn't done before. And it was all to do with sort of experimentation, trying to be a new person almost. Grow up is is used as a phrase, but actually, we're kind of physically doing that because we have to, as humans, we grow taller, but also we kind of have that psychological drive to grow up, to change, to make ourselves be, whoever our adult self is going to be. So it was quite, I say, quite interesting, sort of seeing that actually the research does kind of tie in all of these bits about being able to choose who we are and have that influence. So what has this got to do with school staff, teachers, leaders, teaching assistants, and so on? Well, we know that, taking on a role in education can become pretty much all consuming at times if you let it. Um, there's many, 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 many stories out there where people say, it's taken over my life. I'm working a lot of weekends. It's, all I ever seem to do. And it can feel like almost your job and your identity becomes one and the same thing. Now, I had a lovely message, very, very detailed message from Fran Sorby on social media, who isn't able to join us this evening due to some personal circumstances, but I just wanted to share a little bit of her story, which she wanted to share herself, as I say, unable to be here. So Fran said that she's recently secured her first headship. And she said my post actually about identity had really resonated with her. And this came from the fact that as a child, she always wanted to be a teacher because she'd seen her grandparents be teachers and successful leaders in their later life. She really admired them and what they were doing. So she said, being a teacher was almost part of her identity long before it was actually her job. And she said actually it was so much so that she turned down opportunities in her early adult life because she was so driven and fixed on that end goal of being a teacher. So Fran goes on to talk about training and qualifying in the early 2000s and very much feeling a sense of it being admired if teaching was what you were rather than what you did. Um, and for a lot of teachers that she said she knows, that is something that they've had in common. And unfortunately, it led to a bit of a history of poor boundary setting. Um, and she felt that actually that got to the point where it affected relationships, caused some relationship breakdowns, and ultimately missing out on some opportunities. Very much talking around her family as well and the impact on those, those around her, and unfortunately also experiencing a period of burnout. A friend was quite open, saying that she'd had a lot of support. She took some time out, and she had some specialist advice to support her with how she was feeling, which ultimately led her to revisiting teaching. Um, and she actually, her phrase was, "I re-chose teaching." But not only that, she says, "I re-chose it for my own reasons, not because it was all I knew or at all I wanted to be and couldn't think of what else to do. I chose teaching and it became what I did rather than what I was." And as she said at the beginning of her little description, she is now a successful head teacher, and feels that because she's been able to put those boundaries in place, she does have that sort of, I'm a head teacher when I'm at school, and I'm family Fran when I'm at home. It was really nice when Fran sort of finished off her message to me and said, "I'm sure as headship progresses, more challenges will arise. I have a small child, um, but I think 5 years ago, and Fran's child wasn't very well when she sent this to me, which she was happy to share. Said, 5 years ago, I would have found someone else to watch my child, when actually I really need to be there for her. She really needs me. And actually, the school is still standing without me needing to be there." And I thought that was really quite poignant that, we can get sort of stuck in this thing of, we need to be at school, we need to be there, we need to be there for our team, for our classes, for, whatever reasons we come up with. But actually, do we really need to be there? Are there times when we can step into that different identity and put those boundaries in place? So, as I say, a little bit of a story from Fran, who was unable to join us, but I'm very grateful to her for sharing her experience with me. After a little break to hear from our sponsors, Jack, I can see you are still there, ready to go. So we'll get you joined in once we've heard from the people who support our show.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the three-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Okay, good to hear from our sponsors there, and thank you always to them for supporting us here at Teachers Talk Radio. I can see, Jack, I've got you connected in now, so hopefully we can hear from you. And would you like to give us a little bit of an introduction, actually, and just tell us who you are and what your role is?
Hi, Claire. Thanks for having me. So I've been teaching for about 9 years. I started off as a graphic designer from the age of 19, did a lot of freelance work, quite successful. And within the after 2 years of it, I felt I had a really good opportunity to kind of like teach sixth formers at a private school. And from that, I kind of got the bug for teaching. And since then, I've had a number of roles, teaching, starting off as a teacher of art, going more whole school, looking at coaching development. And recently, I've taken a bit of a step back to relocate to a new school as part of trying to, once again, find myself, and now head of art at a absolutely fantastic school in March. Regarding identity, it's one of the things that kind of, as a teacher, it's not something that you kind of choose to go for. And when I saw there's a mention of identity, it's one of those things that I always question, like, do I identify as a teacher? Do I identify as an artist? And I realised maybe if I focusing too much on identify as a teacher kind of dilutes the idea of, am I teaching for the right reasons? But I just thought I'd throw that out there just to...
That's a big one to start with, actually, isn't
Sorry,
it?
I just want to go straight to the jugular there.
No, don't apologise. That is a really interesting point, actually. And I wonder, actually, if you could, seeing as you've gone for it, go on, tell us a bit more about that.
No, so in the last couple of years, as I've been coaching, when I've had people come in and say, and the question always going, so why teaching? And they said, I've always wanted to be a teacher. And I'd always ask, why do you want to be a teacher? And always reflect back on teachers in their past. And I feel like, actually, sometimes, is that the right reason? Because the reason I went into teaching, because I've had a skill that I was so proud of. I could, I said, I'm going to boost my own ego here. I'm a great painter. I'm good at graphic design. And the first time I ever showed someone how to do it, like on a one-to-one basis, modelling it, I realised that I enjoyed that more than actually making the outcome. So I thought, well, I want to chase that feeling. And as I became a teacher, I got my lanyard. I felt proud. I felt, stepping into this very respected role, and realised, am I doing this for the right reasons? Because the fact is, our existence in life is that pursuit for happiness. And I'm going to say now, I'm absolutely happy being a teacher. I would never ever see myself in any other role, and it's I think it's, without boosting everyone's ego listening to this, it's there's a lot of self-sacrifice, and it's a noble position to be in, because we sacrifice so much of ourselves to be teachers. And reflecting, and nationally we have a teacher shortage, because and I've noticed a lot of people start off going into teaching because they want to be a teacher, but not actually having that natural urge to see other people progress. It's about their identity.
Yeah.
And I've realised the feeling of being a teacher, a teacher that is going to have the best interest in others, are ones who are not doing it to identify as a teacher, but I identify as someone who enjoys watching other people have success. That's what a teacher should be. And we've got this image of a teacher, this icon of respect, this member of the community, and then it's realizing that did I want to become a teacher on a selfish reason, or did I want to become a teacher because I want to see people progress? And this is now one of the questions I bring to UQTs or anyone thinking about a job in education, and not in a negative point at all, because we know how much we sacrifice. We actually, before I came on here, every Friday I actually do an intervention class till 6 o'clock, whilst because it's the students respond better on a Friday. We have about 20 to 30 year 10s and 11s stay after school, because they are engaged and they're positive in the subject. And in most jobs you feel like, no, I want to sign out at 3:30, my time's done, Friday, bring on the weekend. And actually teaching, we don't want to do that. We want to see these kids progress. We want the best for them. My team at the moment is absolutely fantastic. I'm hoping none of them listens, because I don't want them to think I'm being too positive. But one member of my team has spent almost every Saturday coming in school, because she wants to see our kids do well, and that's the identity of a teacher. But it can become all-consuming, and then that's when we need to step back and think: am I identifying as a teacher? Or am I trying to identify as a good person? What do I want to be in life? What do I want to, at the very end of my life, do I want to reflect back and think I was a good teacher, or was I a good person? And sorry, I'm waffling now. I do apologise.
No, not at all. I was just thinking, actually, that idea of being a good person that can almost go two ways, I think. Is it feels like you've got, on the one hand, your member of staff who is obviously keen and wanting to go in and do all those things. Is that because they are wanting to be a good person, or is that because they feel they have to do that in their role because that's the identity that it kind of gives them? So you've kind of opened up a whole new subsection of this conversation there.
I'm so sorry. I tend to do that a lot.
No, it's fine. You go for it.
But yeah, and I always come down to why we do things as people, without going too contextually. Art teacher, I do apologise. But everything we do should be under that pursuit for happiness. We should never do something because we feel like we're forced to. The story you've just told us, I connected to that and thinking, going into teaching because your parents were teaching and felt that was something you needed to do. The reality is, in life, we get one go around this. We get one go around this earth. We need to be doing things that bring us happiness, and hopefully we can guide people and tell them that maybe a true pursuit for happiness is trying to find success in other people rather than ourselves. And when you become a teacher, it's that moment when you realise that you will find happiness in other people becoming successful. And that, to me, is an outstanding teacher. If in the past, when I've interviewed people, I've been looking for members of staff, or looking to promote or push someone's career, that's that one element I'm always looking for. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to go further? Why do you want to become a teacher? And it's always that come back to that question: to myself and reflect, why am I going further? Why do I want to pursue my career? Why do I want to move up the chain? And it's like, is it because I want to help more people? Is it because I want a really fancy car? And and that's kind of, I feel like something we should all reflect on in every point we do, is why are we doing this? And there's nothing wrong with a bit of selfishness. I'm never judging anyone. If you want to become a teacher because you know, it's something you want to enjoy and explore, go for it. But the right person in front of those kids needs to be someone who has their best interests, someone who will take joy and pleasure from watching someone else take something from you, develop it, and build their life on, and creating opportunities.
I think it feels a lot like what you're saying is almost sort of connecting identity with somebody's motivation.
And in all fairness, that's what kind of creates our identity. Identity is not something we choose. I think identity is something that's presented to us. People keep look at me and identify me as, an artist, a teacher, but I don't identify as a teacher. I try to identify as a good person. I identify as a father. I identify as someone who just wants to make every person happy any way I can. But they keep saying, well, that's a teacher, that's a father, that's an artist, and I think, well, okay. Sorry, egotistical, I do apologise.
No, it's interesting because it's almost like you're saying you've got. I think it's great. You've wanted to be someone who is happy, who is a father, who's all those things. But it's almost like as human beings, we have this need to kind of put things in boxes and make people go, oh, okay, we understand what they are or who they are if we call them a teacher, if we identify them for them, give them that identity. Whereas actually, on an individual level, we feel quite rightly that we are so much more than that.
And as you said, we create labels are a product of human thought. And you've rightly so said we create them so we can understand them. But do we need to really understand someone's identity? Should it not be a personal reflection on themselves? Someone who, part of their journey for happiness, and kind of, let them create it themselves. Let them, make that decision, and that own self-reflection, because we're all going to make that journey at some point. And, especially in, a lot of things in social development and within our culture, there's a lot of communication about how we identify ourselves now. And we need to be completely open to allowing everyone to kind of find their own identity themselves and not create that label for them.
And you're saying about, we can't choose some things, because I don't think anybody really now would question the fact that, we are born biologically male or biologically female. Some of those identities are, nothing that we can influence, nothing that we have any, we're born, that's how we are, in the same way as people's sexuality, people's race, people's culture, that is just the situation they kind of find themselves in. But there are other things that perhaps, we can have influence over. And I just, if you don't mind, I just wanted to pick up on something actually that you'd mentioned to me when we were sort of discussing the show, because you have had, as we all have, you've had some labels attached to you in your career. So, head of department, and I know you'd sort of mentioned how that identity and, your personal situation sometimes, there was some things that perhaps weren't aligned there.
Yeah. So I regarding my personal life, and I'd like to say within education, every school I've worked for has been really, really good. I've gone through quite a messy divorce, and mainly I've changed my kind of role to focus on being a dad and step down. But actually, as I've changed the identity from whole school to just focusing on department, I've realised my workload has actually become quite harder, because I've had to adapt my identity, going from, as I said, going from a whole school, let me guess right, like a whole school identity, going to just focusing on a department. But then I realised that kind of part of my identity has leaked out into my new role, and I've actually found out it's quite hard to make that change as I step from one school to another, and re-establishing and adapting it to work around my new position. But as I said, with the support I've had and the amazing people within my team, it's become much more easier than it should have. And as I said, as reflection kind of thing, my using that part of my identity has actually boosted my ability as a teacher. But also, as I enter a new school, I'm proud to say, like, I feel like I've stepped in, built that identity, recognisable. And said I've been in my school since September, and when I tell people I only joined in September, they're kind of shocked sometimes, because they feel like I've been there forever. But that's how we use our identity, and how moving from a whole school role to just a department role, still keeping the traits and the communication skills and that kind of burst of energy and identity, and ensuring that building those connections within the whole school has helped me do that. Which, if I just went from being a classroom teacher to a middle leader, moving from one school to another, I don't think I would have had that opportunity, knowledge, and that skill to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting you talked about making connections there as well, isn't it? Because part of, at least for me, I think part of our identity is not just how we see ourselves, but how others see us as well. So you're, in the comments that they've made, and that's really lovely that people feel like you've been there a lot longer, because they've obviously, kind of taken you in, I suppose, but you've got that, awareness. People know who you are around the school. You're embedded in what's going on. But do you think that idea of connection with others has been part of what has worked for you in that sense?
Oh, 100%. I think one of the most greatest strengths of the human condition is our ability to communicate and build those links. It's without going a bit more Darwin, it's a survival instinct that we build those relationships quite quick, and and I say in education, we all have the same motive. We all want young people to succeed, and I think that's a common connection within our identity that helps us. As I said, the school I'm currently at is very clearly focused on student growth, student success, and everyone wants to see the school do absolutely well. And it's a really lovely environment, and I think that builds into the identity of the school and into the identity of every single teacher, because we have that one common goal that brings us together.
So I think, what I'm really hearing strongly from you then is that actually our identity almost doesn't exist on its own. You're part of the school, and the school's kind of common identity, what it wants to achieve. And I guess, anyone who's moved from one school to another will feel that, they are all different.
But it's okay to have more than one identity, and I feel that when we try to say I'm this, I'm that, we can have many different strings to our bow, if that makes sense. Sorry, my analogies are terrible.
That's right.
That's one part of my identity.
It's a Friday.
Oh no, actually a really good part, if I'm going to roast myself, one of the things a lot of staff bring up is that I seem to use too many analogies, and that's become part of my identity. Sometimes I do it for a joke. I know I think in my last department meeting, I purposely had a little, I never told them this, I had a little tally on the side, and I was seeing how many analogies can I put in, because it was part of that engagement. And actually, in relation to identity and engagement, how was I a few years ago, I've run a CPD about improving teaching and learning and using our identity as a way to get student engagement, you taking a part of us and adapting our teaching style to reflect and to make it more enjoyable. And the fact is, we enjoy teaching, the children will enjoy our lessons. When I started whole school coaching as more of like kind of like a career driven, and I love the idea of trying to promote, talking about trying to see success in others. I felt I could make more of an impact, developing teachers rather than just focusing on just my classes. But regarding one of the things I do in a whole school analysis previous job, I realised a lot of teachers were seeing good practice and trying to copy the good practice they've seen without realising the reason that class was engaged, because that teacher developed that style of teaching based on who they were. And as a common misconception is that we see a teacher doing a good job and we think, well, I want to replicate that, I will copy that style of teaching, realise it doesn't fit them. My partner, she wears a size 6 pair of trainers, but I've got a size 13 feet. They're not going to fit me. And I feel that's what we're doing with teaching. We're seeing someone who is a very energetic, performative teacher, but the person who's trying to replicate that is more quiet and calm, and that's where they should develop their teaching based on their personality. So I asked, rather than saying that go out and observe other people teach and see what styles you like, I said, reflect on yourself, reflect on what kind of person you think you are before, and then try finding teachers that have a very similar communication. Find someone who kind of comes under your umbrella in relation to personality, identity, and kind of overall communication skills. I work with an amazing teacher, and she's very calm. She's very positive, but actually I'm quite energetic. I'm like a Duracell battery. So if I try to replicate, I absolutely love the way she teaches, but it won't suit me. Like, it will scare the kids, because they turn around and I come into a lesson very calm and gentle and soothing. They're gonna think they've done something wrong. But if they walk into lesson like, kind of like game show host mentality, they get engaged because they're realizing there's that element of honesty and they buy into it. And I feel, regarding our identity as teachers, we should also incorporate that into our teaching and learning as well. And it makes it more fun, honest for us. Children are intelligent. They are emotionally, I think students now are more emotionally intelligent than our generation. And they can pick up if we are not honest in the way we perform as a teacher. So we need to be able to reflect on ourselves, be honest who we are, and adapt our teaching personalities and identities around that. And that's how I've seen outstanding teachers develop their skills.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, and I think we could probably go on talking about this all evening. And I've just mindful we've got a couple of people listening, so whether they want to pop any questions in for you, in case they have any other thoughts. Other than that, there's just one sort of final thought from me, Jack, before we perhaps move on a little bit with the show. But it feels like a lot of what you're talking about in terms of identity, and I really liked actually what you said there about teaching in your own style, is also linked to being authentic.
Yes, 100%. And as I said, honesty should really be part of our identity as a teacher, that we are the uncorruptible. We are an image of, hopefully I don't get my teaching standards wrong, especially if anyone from my school is listening, but I can't remember if it's part 2 or teaching standard 8, where it's focusing on, you know, how we are within the community, but it's also about our professional conduct. I always get those two mixed up. So, but regarding our professional conduct, part of our identity has to be, you know, pure. We need to be honest, and we need to be modeling that honesty throughout, and that needs to be also how we present ourselves. If a child, you know, if I was to go into a lesson very energetic and bubbly and they saw me in Tesco's being grumpy, then they're going to walk away and think, he's putting a show on, I can't trust him. And trust is a major thing in part of teaching, because you can't ask a child to buy into you if they can't trust you. And buying is a massive part.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know whether you've seen any of or heard any of my other shows, but I talk quite frequently about pupils with SEMH needs, because I have a sort of background in alternative education, and absolutely with you there on the trust, and you know, getting that buy-in, getting that engagement, that is so absolutely key. So really, really lovely actually to hear that, you know, that is what's happening in all different schools all around the country, because it's so needed. Jack, it's been brilliant, as I say, talking to you. We could go on for ever and a day, I'm sure, about this. But you know, it is a Friday.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just mindful of your time and the fact that, you know, it's Friday evening. You've perhaps got other things you might want to get off and do. Obviously, if you want to stay on the show listening, because I do know that I've got Emma now able to join us after being stuck in the traffic jam for all that time. So what I'll do, Jack, is say thank you to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly,
lovely.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great talking to you, and really, really interesting to hear your thoughts, and brilliant for going straight to the jugular right at the beginning of the show.
Thanks for using my analogy.
Oh dear. Well, enjoy your evening, and I say it'd be lovely if you want to stay on and listen, because we do have Emma who will be able to join us in a minute. What I'm going to do is just go over to the news for a little while.
No, thank you so much.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the 3-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
With the general election approaching, some political parties have already turned their attention to education. All major media outlets have covered Labour's plans to add VAT to private school fees and the Conservatives' comments on increasing apprenticeships by getting rid of rip-off degrees. However, the BBC features a story on proposals by the Lib Dems to increase taxes on social media giants as well as companies such as Amazon and Google. The revenue raised, the party says, would then be used to fund mental health professionals for all England state schools. The tax itself already exists and is known as the Digital Services Tax, but the Liberal Democrats say they would triple the amount the companies paid in it. Recent NHS statistics reported by the BBC show nearly 340,000 children and young people are currently on waiting lists to access mental health services in England. In response, the Conservatives said they'd already increased training places for mental health nurses, while Labour said it would put mental health support in every school. In Teesside, the BBC Tees news website reports on Nigerian students seeking help from a food charity. An economic crash in Nigeria has left international students at Teesside University struggling to afford tuition fees, with some even blocked from their studies and ordered to return home. The manager of Thornaby's Sprouts Community Food Charity spoke to BBC Local Radio and said 75% of their clients were now the struggling students and that it was at maximum capacity. The university itself said it was providing support and that international applicants must provide evidence of sufficient funds when applying for a student visa. Nigeria is currently experiencing its worst economic crisis in a generation. The value of its currency has been depreciating by more than 200% against the dollar. As a result, students at many UK universities have seen savings wiped out and budgets having to be significantly reduced. Some students at Teesside University have complained that the university's decision to change the payment plan and reduce instalments from 7 to 3 have exacerbated issues. The university is offering case-by-case support to those affected. In Northern Ireland, the TES reports that Education Minister Paul Givan has warned schools they must make school uniforms more affordable and that a price cap is being considered. He said the cost of uniform was an unnecessary burden on families by branded clothing and uniforms being available from only one supplier. Mr Given said proposals due to go out for public consultation this spring will include strengthened guidance on the school uniforms. The decisions came in response to a motion in Stormont on making uniforms affordable. Mr Given said school uniforms create a sense of belonging to a school community, but that they should also act to ensure that pupils of all backgrounds feel welcome in the school. He went on to say that while many schools had followed current guidance around value for money, there are other schools which have not, and that this is not a situation which I am going to permit to continue. Further details on the proposals, which could also include the price cap, can be found in TES magazine online. Holiday prices feature in a Schools Week article on criticism faced by holiday company Butlins after it was accused of undermining schools' work to boost attendance. The criticism came after the company advertised term time breaks as great value getaways. The firm offers a 4-night midweek term time break for just under £20 per person, much cheaper than rates during school holidays. Schools Week reporters posed as parents and asked if the holidays were suitable for school-aged children and were told all breaks are suitable for all ages. Ministers have pushed all year for schools to improve their attendance rates as persistent absence rates are nearly double pre-pandemic levels. Several multi-academy trust chief executives have commented that marketing holidays which specifically target term time is not civic-minded, but understood the attraction for families struggling to afford a family break, who are being exploited by the companies. Full details of the story are available on Schools Week's website. Finally, aposiopesis was the final word spelled correctly by 12-year-old Bruat Soma to win the 2024 Scripps National Spelling Bee in the USA. Soma takes home a $50,000 prize after spelling 29 words in 90 seconds and getting them all correct. For those of you who are curious, Aposiopesis is a term used for the device of suddenly breaking off in speech. An example of this rhetorical device could be "get out or else," with the threat remaining unsaid. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Jo Fox.
Hey, thank you there to Jo for the news and to our sponsors. We're talking today all about identity and whether as a teacher or leader our identity is our job role, or whether there's more to it. Emma, I'm hoping we can get you on now. You had a nightmare journey home, I hear.
Yeah, Legoland was not kind to me, Claire, at all.
No.
We've had a lovely trip, but a nightmare journey. But here I am. So I'm very pleased to be here and on land and not in a car. So,
yeah, well, thank you so much, because it's always, I always feel, I'm asking people to go up their Friday evening anyway, and then when you've had a bit of a difficult journey back and everything else, it's just one thing after another. So I do appreciate you joining me this evening. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do?
Well, my name is Emma Cooper, and I have been a teacher 18 years, which is shocking to me because I still feel 20. And I've been a teacher of music and drama, so identity is a huge part of my life and what I put across. I've also been associate vice principal. I've worked abroad and in England, and I've recently just took a kind of different step in my career, and I'm currently a tutor for the IT programme for the National Institute of Teaching. So I now train the future of teaching, which is absolutely amazing and fantastic. And I'm so privileged and lucky to be able to do that. So that's where my kind of angle is coming from. I had to laugh when Jack said he is the king of analogies, because I'm sure you'll probably meet the queen of analogies now as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Perhaps I should just rename my show for today. It's all about analogy. Perhaps somebody might like to go through and listen back and count how many there are, because I've lost count already. That was just Jack's section. So there we go.
God.
I think that's really interesting. Not only your sort of career journey, as in different roles, but also geographical journey. You've taught abroad as well, but also being a drama teacher, because you're almost calling on people to take on different identities, aren't you? In that, it's part of our education.
Hugely. And I think about what I do currently, and I always say to the trainees, and when I've worked in schools with ECTs and ITs, I say you've got to have so many different hats in this career, and you've kind of got to have a very thick skin, because this is the kind of nature of the beast. But you've also got to realize that this career that you're going into is full of self-realization and reflection, and you'll actually learn so much about who you are and what you put out there, more than I think really in any other career, because you're so analytical. You always want to improve. You're always reflecting, why did that lesson go like that? Why did this situation go like that? And I think that really you become kind of intertwined. You reflect on yourself at work, but then you're reflecting on yourself at home and in your own kind of life. So it's crazy to think, but I just think we kind of, as school leaders or teachers or anyone within a school, we have a hat that we put on that is our public face. And probably things that would frazzle us at home, we have to kind of not show that in school. So I think it's really interesting, as Jack was saying earlier, in yourself, you have to be honest. And I totally agree with that. But then how honest can you truly be? And what can you truly show? And I think that's really important to think about.
That is. And I think that's, we talk about that sort of making me think about, different concepts that are talked about in terms of like compassion fatigue gets mentioned, particularly for those working with the students who perhaps struggle for some reason with, special needs and whatever. But also, you mentioned yourself, we go home, we reflect on things, whether that's the drive home stuck on the M1, or whether it's, on a Saturday night when we've actually had chance to sit down for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And actually, what impact is all of that having?
I just think we're in a constant loop of dialogue and self-analysis and self-reflection, and, you know, the situations can really sit with someone. I see it all the time. I've seen it in myself, and that does affect what and who you are at home. Say you've had something happen, you've had some sort of discourse with a colleague or a student, or something's happened, you bring that home, and then that dialogue loop continues. Or we've all had it where a student's said something unkind to us potentially. Yeah. And then it's kind of like, well, how much of that is us? And this is why I try and say to trainees, and I try and say to people I work with, if you have that different hat, and this is the hat I'm coming into work, and this is, you know, I'll call it Miss Cooper that's coming into work, and that is me in work. It's far easier to take that kind of loop of feedback and see it as, well, that's not me that they've commented on. They've said I've been mean, or they've said that I've not marked their work correctly. That's that role. It's far easier to come home and kind of decompartmentalize all of that. I think it's super tricky. We're so intertwined of ourselves, and we put ourselves out there, as you and Jack said earlier, because we want to be honest and authentic. But then it kind of leaves us open to really to take things to heart, or to really take that dialogue home with us and reflect on it, possibly too much.
And that's a tough one, isn't it? Because we can't escape who we are. We can't escape our job role either. And, you know, yeah, I'm sure lots of people teach, and I certainly have been in that situation where, like, say, a student says something, and you kind of have to go, they're saying it, I'm not going to take it personally. I'm not going to, you know, that's not actually about me. But if our identity is so intertwined, perhaps maybe it is, and maybe we need to. Is that something we need to shift that narrative of? Because we know it's not okay, isn't it, for students to make those kind of comments that are hurtful, and, you know, they get followed up in line with whatever policy the school has. But is it also then about recognising? Perhaps we need to do more recognising the impact on the staff.
Do you know what I found, Claire? That I think the teachers that are the most authentic, and they put the heart and soul themselves, it's them raw in front of the kids. They're the ones that find it the hardest in terms of being able to have that thick skin, because they are putting themselves out. I know we were speaking, and you were speaking earlier about why we become a teacher. What is that motivation? Intrinsic, extrinsic motivation is a great thing to understand in people. But a lot of people do it for a love of their subject and a passion. And they put that passion across in abundance. And then obviously when that kind of comes back to them, and you think about, if someone said a comment to you in the street, an adult, say, how would you handle that? That is where that identity comes in. And how would you actually handle that? But how the public face of me has got to handle that can be very, very different, can't it? And it's about not only developing a thick skin, but again, thinking this is me at school and this is me at home. But it's easier said than done. And it's that resilient mind frame, but it's getting tougher and tougher. I think seeing the new kind of the next generation, as I call them, of teachers coming. It's so hard. I mean, we're from, and I don't want to talk about you, Claire, but in my age, I'm from the old school where, you know, you had to just be tough, and that was that. It's very, very different now. And I think Jack was saying everyone is so self-aware, everyone, including the students. Times have changed. Everything is quite there's an emotional balance constantly with relationships within schools, in communities, with parents, with carers, with other stakeholders. It's a different game. I call it a game, pardon my pun, but it's a different kind of game we're playing now. It's a different kind of strategy that we're using. But it's so difficult because you will always be who you are. And we're obviously training a variety of people. And there's a variety of people, like a little microcosm of the world in schools, aren't we? And there's just all the personalities, all the different kind of balances going on. And it's really hard, particularly for a trainee who's maybe come straight from university, to really find their feet in a school community. I think it's really difficult. Super difficult. But it's about what do we offer in terms of teacher training that's going to help them with that. And also, I know Jack was mentioning coaching, but looking after our staff and training them in the difficult conversations, in the different psychological strategies you can use, because we do forget the longer we're in a school, every day kind of like you do what you do, don't you?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I think that's, yeah, and going back to what you said about, it is a different game and we need a different strategy. That feels really crucial, because it kind of that thing of like, if you do the same as you've always done, you'll get the same as you've always got, and actually that doesn't work, does it? Things have changed, for all sorts of reasons, and we do perhaps need to think about, like you say, the psychological strategies, and you've got a brilliant sort of position and opportunity there, haven't you, in terms of what you are doing now, working with the trainees. And I think that's really nice that you're giving them that opportunity to sort of reflect on who they are and why they've gone into teaching and all of those kind of things, because that feels like it's quite critical in kind of shaping actually retention of staff over time.
That's all we talk about, retention. Obviously, the Department for Education has changed now. I don't know if you knew this, but my company that I'm working with, we're doing the DFE pilot for the reform of training for ITs and ECTs. And what I've noticed is it's embedded in research. So everything we do is research-based practice, deliberate practice, and there's a particular push on psychology and understanding cognitive metacognition, cognitive behaviour, trauma-informed and trauma-led schools. They're becoming a big thing, and about particularly a real push on behaviour and kind of about how to handle situations. And we do a lot of deliberate practice with our trainees on how to de-escalate, how to handle kind of behaviour management to build that really positive culture. And I know you were talking earlier about teacher standards. We call them strands now, Claire. Can you believe it? Who knew? Well, they are the teacher standards, but in strands. But yeah, it's strand 7, professional behaviours. And I know Jack was touching upon that earlier, but what is in that strand is just really making teachers think about what are they putting out there into the world when they're not in school. So as part of it, one of the things that you have to look at is online presence, your social medias, and having a high standard of professional conduct. So that is in public as well. So not only is your professional face the day-to-day where you are very professional, but that also will seep into what you like on a weekend, what you're putting out into the world in terms of on your Twitter, your Facebook, even your LinkedIn. And it really does make everyone think all the time, like, where am I working? Am I going to work where I live? Yeah. Do I want that? Do I want my family to be involved in that? And the professional behaviours, it's such a critical thing, because you are a public facing person, aren't you? So how you are in every element of your life is really worth thinking about, because there is that huge crossover, and that is part of what you're signing up to within this profession. And we all have like our own enjoyments, don't we? I know there's teachers who do kickboxing outside of school. I know there's teachers who really enjoy a spot of karaoke. But, you've got to kind of not only about what you enjoy, but kind of what's acceptable, and also what you're kind of doing in the public face. I know there was a newspaper article a few years ago about a young teacher who had been seen drunk in the city centre, and you think, well, kind of what's the problem? But some parents had seen her, taken pictures, and really she was near to dismissal at the school. And you think, you can't even go out now of a weekend because there's that level of eyes on you. And that's another thing about our identity. And a lot of people come into this profession, and they've been in professional like careers before. We train a variety of people, and they seem to have a great understanding of that. But I think it's really, really hard for some new and up and coming people who've come from university to understand that how professional you actually need to be within this job role. It's crucial.
I think it's so important, isn't it? I mean, anyone who's involved in recruitment, as I've been, you'll know now that you have to do your due diligence on, background checks, which includes social media. So people have got more than, multiple reasons to be careful what they are posting out
Yeah.
there on the web. But it's, it kind of makes a contrast actually, because we have this conversation, quite rightly so, about having those boundaries, about, not necessarily letting work rule your life. And we always think of that in terms of like the marking, the planning, and things like that. But actually, we're also saying to people, but you do need to be always mindful of your job in your everyday life, because you can't just go up the street on a Saturday night having had a skinful,
Yeah.
because there might be people watching you, and that's kind of makes a bit of a, it's like, bit of a mixed message almost, isn't it? Because have your boundary, leave work at work. Oh no, but don't,
Yeah.
because someone might be
Yeah.
watching.
Yeah, it's and that doesn't give our profession a very good kind of public face. And what we need, as we've said, there's a recruitment crisis. We need the best people in front of our kids. And those best people might enjoy to go out of a Saturday night and be amazing all week. Do you want the best people, because these are life chances, and that holds heavy on everyone, their children's life chances. But that might put off the best people, because they might feel that very repressed or suppressed by the weight of what working in a school has, because you're really a role model, particularly in some of the tougher communities that you've worked in. I'm sure people who are listening and work in those types of communities, you're seen by those students and even the community as a real pillar of society. And that is heavy. That's heavy stuff. Like, I was like, I'm just from Chesterfield. That's all I kind of, I'm just like from a working class background. That's fine. But to them, you've been to university, and it's like you've been in the upper echelons. So really like what you want the students to kind of perceive you as, but then you also want that humility and that reality of, at the end of the day, we know relationships are formed with honesty. So if you kind of go in there with this kind of false presence, they see through it. So it's a real balance. I think the word is balance of this podcast today. It's like we are balancing everything. Our identity at home with our identity at school, our identity in the community. And also, I also think, and we didn't mention this earlier, is how you want to be perceived. And I have this conversation regularly with a lot of my trainees, particularly male trainees. And we talk about kind of how do you want to be perceived? And, the masculine role has come up a lot. And how can I be a softer masculine role? Well, when actually I might be the only masculine role that these students see. How do I want to come across? What do I want to be? And I know Jack touched upon this, that a lot of people emulate what they see, because they think it's the secret recipe, but it's not authentic to them. And I think it's about that balance again, of you being your authentic self, but with a bit of face on, with a lick of lipstick, a lick of glittering. We always kind of say it's kind of like you run a school. It's a bit like running a dance show. I used to have this joke all the time with my old head teacher, both from performing arts background. Whatever the frazzle, whatever the situation, you put your lippy on, you comb your fringe, and you go, and you are the swan. Your feet might be going mad underneath, but you are gliding across to deal with it. So it's also about what do we want to show? How much do you want to give of yourself? But how much do you want to show that is kind of maybe a bit of a show time? I used to kind of see going into school as it's game time. I've got my game face on, and nothing's going to flat me, and that's how I'm going to play it. And I think it's a lot to think about, isn't it? A lot for anyone.
There's a huge amount there, and I think what I'd like to do actually is just come back and spend a little bit more time thinking about this idea of being authentic, being true to ourselves, but kind of linking in again with something Jack mentioned earlier on, which was around, it's only really when we truly be ourselves that we can make those meaningful connections with the young people. So can I just leave that thought with you for a minute while we just hear from our sponsors one last time, and then I'll come back to you. Is that all right?
Yeah, Claire, thank you.
Empowering education with Easy for You, where innovation meets accessibility. Our subscription-based offering not only equips schools with cutting-edge devices, but revolutionizes the learning experience by eliminating financial barriers, streamlining support, and embracing technology. We're not just providing tools, we're shaping a future where every student can thrive, unburdened by limitations. Easy for You, transforming education, one device at a time. Find out more at www.easyforyou.school.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Reading Solutions UK. Are you looking for best practices and innovative strategies to foster confident, lifelong readers? Join the free online International Reading Conference on the 11th, 12th and 13th of June. Hear from speakers like TV personality and education expert Basit Siddiqui, beloved children's author Michael Rosen, fluency expert Tim Rosinski, EEF specialist Chloe Butlin, the National Literacy Trust's Irene Picton, and a range of experienced practitioners, including MAT leaders, deputy heads, heads of English, high-level teaching assistants, and school librarians. Through the three-day conference, speakers will explore a range of topics at the forefront of the current educational landscape, with sessions relevant for all educators and key stages. Visit Reading Solutions at readingsolutionsuk.co.uk for more information and to sign up for this free conference.
Okay, thank you once again to our sponsors there. I just left Emma with the thought before we heard from them that, if we are perhaps sometimes putting a little bit of a mask or a little bit of a front on who we are, how does that relate to what Jack said earlier on in the show about being our authentic selves in order to build those really sort of true, meaningful connections with our students? So, Emma, can I come back to you on that just to hear a little bit more from you before we sort of come to the end of the show?
I think that you can build those connections. You really can, but it's about how much you kind of want to feel comfortable, I think is the word to put out of yourself. And I think, everyone puts on some sort of show in any job role. It's a public face, isn't it? Everyone puts that on, no matter where they work, whether they're in teaching or they're in another profession. And I think in a way it is important to do that. And we all do it, whether we subconsciously do it or not. And I think you can still build authentic and honest relationships. You can still do that and probably in the most professional sense, but also kind of in a way of self-protection. And it depends as well on your position in school, I think, because if you're in a senior leadership team, for example, you need to be seen as someone who's very reliant, someone who's very competent, somebody who stands by their word, all of those things. And there'll be times when you're not going to know what to do in a situation, but there's going to be a number of people relying on you to know what to do. And surely that then is a face of, I'm going to take some breathing space. We will deal with it. Whereas inside, it's that swan again. You probably feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. But I think that's very much the same even when you're a teacher facing the students. There may be something that comes up that you would never think in a million years would happen, like a wasp flies in the window. And
guaranteed to cause chaos.
Exactly. And you could go and panic and go wild, or you put that face on of professionalism and you're kind of inflappable in any situation. And that is a face at the end of the day, isn't it? There's times when people want to run screaming for the hills, but they don't. They stay and they solve it and they become a better person from it. And that's where the reflection is. So I think all of what we do in our profession has got that facade to it. And I think Jack was saying earlier, he's got that high energy game show kind of vibe to get the engagement. And I think, you know, anyone can do that. And it's how we engage our students. And, you know, I'm not suggesting, I don't think Jack probably goes home and goes, yeah, everyone, come on, get the washing up going, you know, like that kind of vibe. So I do think we definitely have different identities and we show what we want to show, whether we know that we're doing that or we don't know that we're doing that. And I think that's really important because, like I say, we are role models for that community, for the school, for the students, and we need to seem super capable and that everything's calm because, like I always say, that your vibe brings your tribe. That's
I like
one of my many phrases. But if you're super calm in a school and you're a super calm leader, it will trickle down to everybody that you're gliding along and you're like, yeah, this is fine, you know. We're here. I mean, I'm not saying like walk past a fight or whatever, but I'm saying kind of like your positivity, your energy, and that high energy and that high kind of showmanship and positivity will bring everyone with you, as well as integrity, as well as standing by you and all of those things.
Yeah.
Having kind of that positivity will trickle down to the kids, will trickle down to staff, the community. So I think it's really important to think, who do you want to be in your role and bringing that in abundance. And I think Jack's alluded to, it's the positive people that really kind of, some people find them super annoying in schools. Those really positive, like, why are they so chipper? We've had this put on it. But, you know, eventually, you know, everyone will jump on board and get with it because they can see that actually it works. It works with the relationships. It works with kind of like how you approach everything. You approach everything really differently. And I would also say, and I think Jack was talking about this earlier about all the different jobs you have and you want to be doing this. And I know he mentioned about one of his teachers going in on Saturday. And I think, wow, that is a lot. And I think, have they got kids, that person going in on a Saturday? But I always think as well, and the question to ask yourself, and I think all teachers and anyone in the profession need to, is the juice worth the squeeze? And by that, I mean, what are we putting in and what are we getting out? So if you know, where do we need to be putting our energies into that's going to get the highest impact? And that's with our personality and our identity as well. We could all be staying every night till 7 p.m. and be absolutely worn to a frazzle the next day. But what are we getting back from that? And I think that's another thing for us all to think about. We're talking balance, but you know, that's the same with how much of yourself you put into your job. Is the juice worth the squeeze with that? Like if you're putting all out, what's happening at home? Is your child like on their own at home while you're with thousands of other children? So it's kind of like, that is the balancing act. And I think the other thing to say, and I don't think it's been brought up earlier, I think when you become a parent, that really changes your perception. It changed mine drastically as a teacher. Before pre-child, I was like a different teacher to what I was now. So I think that's worth thinking about as well, because you've not only got who you are at school, you've also got that mum or that dad or that carer hat on when you get home. And I think that's super tricky.
And I mean, I think that's probably a whole other show in itself. And interestingly that you mentioned that, because when we're talking about identity, and when I put out those sort of feelers to see if anybody wanted to come on the show, that quite a few people that did respond were saying, you know, there is that balance, as we said, between your home and your school, but particularly if you are a parent, and it seemed to be even more pronounced actually for people with younger children, I guess, because they need us that little bit more. So yeah, really interesting there. And like I said to Jack, I think we could probably go on all night, but we perhaps need to just tie things up a little bit. Emma and Jack, because I can see he's still listening as well. It has been absolutely brilliant talking to both of you. So I do want to say a big thank you. And Emma, I get what you're saying about you are the queen of analogies. I like that juice and squeeze one, and Jack may be going to borrow that one now. So hopefully you can pinch one of his as a sort of unofficial trade. Yeah, have a listen back to the bit at the beginning when you were trying to join it. Oh look, he said he's stealing it. he's already on it. He's already taken that away with him. So yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think, like you said yourself, the key word coming from the conversation today is balance, and it's finding that, yes, we're who we are at school. Yes, we're who we are when we're not at school, and it's okay to be both. It's good to be both, and it is just making sure that where we need to have boundaries, we have them, we keep them as much as we can, but also still remaining true and authentic to who we are. So some amazing comments that have come out from this conversation. So yeah, thank you to both of you. And Jack, there we are. Next CPD session is planned as well, so little bonus on a Friday night. Thank you very much, both of you. Thank you to people who've been listening live as well, and if you have downloaded the podcast, thank you to you. It's good to have you listening, and whatever you're about to do for the rest of the day, the weekend, the week, have a lovely time, and I will be back in 2 weeks.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.